Did you listen to what the family had to say?
I did.
And less than 24 hours later, after they had called for calm, Nigel Farage decided to record a special campaigning video suggesting that people respond with pure, cold rage. What was more important to reform this week, making that political argument that you believe in, or respecting the wishes of the family?
Well, Laura, did you listen to the full statement from Henry's father?
You're here, having appreciated your time coming in to ask questions. Obviously, we've just played the statement from Henry's father. He made plain lots of things. Obviously, they're very unhappy with what happened to the police. My question to you, though, is what is more important, the political argument that you're trying to make, which you believe in very deeply, or respecting the family's wishes when they clearly said, do not turn this into a big political argument?
Okay, so I'm going to assume you did listen to the whole statement because you're a prestigious politician. You played a part of it, a very small segment of it. It went on for about 8 minutes. And you've also, as the BBC, chosen not to air the body cam footage. Again, that is the BBC's right editorially. You're more than within your rights to do that. But I want to make a couple of points here. And I'd point out to people it's been shown many times already. But on a Sunday morning, we've made the decision not to show it again because it's caused a lot of distress. And that is absolutely your right. I want to make a couple of points for your viewers that have not seen it, perfectly understandably, given how harrowing it is. The last words Henry Nowak heard on this planet Earth were his rights being read to him by the police as he was handcuffed, as he bled to death, and his murderer and his family were standing over him. The result of an accusation of racism that was taken more seriously by Hampshire police than Henry's repeated statements that he had been stabbed. And another thing that hasn't been in this program, and again, I'm not criticizing you nor the BBC for this, but again, it's really important context for your viewers. When Henry said, "I've been stabbed," the response he got from the attending officer, Laura, was, "I don't think you have, mate." And if you listen to Henry's father's statement in full, as you did point out in the clip you heard, he talked about the differential way in which his son was treated relative to Digweed, the murderer, was, quote, unbearable. He also made a very explicit statement that in his view, it is unacceptable for anybody to be carrying 21 centimetre blades around in public. And therefore, what Reform has done, and what Nigel Farage has done, is said that we need to live in a country, Laura, we need to urgently put on the agenda living in a country where everybody is treated equally. Nobody gets to carry deadly weapons around, and Reform are the only party. The Tories are refusing to commit to this. As you just heard, Labour will not commit to this. And we've discussed... Live in a country where nobody gets to carry a deadly weapon around, regardless of what religion you are. And finally, let me just make the last point here. The last point here is what Nigel said was white lives matter just as much as black lives do. And I think I defy you to tell me that the vast majority of your viewers disagree with that statement.
But my question to you is, what was more important to you as a party, making that political argument or respecting the wishes of a grieving family? And I would say we've talked to the family's representatives this weekend, and they have said they would like to reiterate that they did not want this to cause division in the last few days. So what was more important to you as a party, making this political argument, as Nigel Farage did, within 24 hours, recording what he called an emergency address, making a very political point on a very sensitive issue where he said we're living in a two-tier culture in this country where the rights and privileges of white people matter less than those of ethnic minorities. So I'll ask you the same question again. What was more important to you, respecting the family's wishes or making a political argument?
Respecting the family's wishes, which is what we've done, because there's nothing more divisive, Laura, than two-tier policing. And as you've already pointed out on this program, because I was just watching your interview with David Lammy, the notion that there is structural anti-white prejudice embedded within British policing is not just speculation or something Nigel says or something I say. It is literally on the police's own website, both Hampshire Police and British policing. The Race Action Plan, which, by the way, was brought into being under a Tory government, let me just finish this point, explicitly demands that officers do not treat everybody the same and are not colourblind. And the Hampshire Police's, this is something that's new to this programme because you didn't talk about it before, it's really important. Hampshire Police's own race action plan, which was brought about in 2023 under the last Tory government, says explicitly that officers must prioritise offences that, quote, cause most harm to ethnic minorities.
But you said
that is what you saw in that body cam footage, to the degree you watched it, is directly downstream from that, Laura. And we've got to call out prejudice wherever it exists. And where it is literally embedded in policing guidelines and code of conduct, That is all the more
And
urgent.
We've shown people the police chief's guidance this morning. We discussed that with David Lammy, but you said that you respect the family more than you wanted to make a political argument. As I understand it, there's been no direct contact, though, between Nigel Farage and the family. And it wasn't until Thursday that anyone from Reform reached out to them, which was 2 days after he made that, what he called an emergency address.
Well,
Should you have contacted them earlier?
I am not going to comment on confidential and private conversations that Nigel Farage, our party leader, has. That would be inappropriate. But again, I watched Henry's father's statement in full. I watched it several times, because it's incredibly moving. And again,
it is, but I'm asking about the context,
and I want
to move on.
But hold on, this is actually really important. He explicitly said
many times.
It is outrageous that people can wander around the streets of Britain in public carrying a 21 centimetre blade.
And you said that already.
And Reform are the only party that have committed to ending that two-tier policing.
You've said that already. What is your evidence that this awful killing was a direct result of the advice to police officers and how they should behave? How do you know that what happened in those terrible moments was a result of what you say is anti-white racism rather than just police incompetence? What's your evidence for that?
Okay, so here's my evidence. The police race action plan, both the National Police and Hampshire Police, which explicitly, astonishingly, staggeringly, actually, I mean, I actually could not believe, as somebody who is a full-time politician, I couldn't believe what I was reading. It explicitly demands that officers...
I'm not asking you about the advice.
I'm asking you...
But hold on. Forgive me.
With respect, Laura, you've got to let me finish my point, because I'm answering your question.
That it was a direct result of the advice rather than what happened in that moment and the police making a terrible mistake.
So Laura, a mistake would imply that the police were not complying with the guidance that they had been given. And the point I'm making, I'm going to draw a direct link between what is on that website and the risk of labouring the point. It explicitly says do not treat people the same if you're a police officer, and that you should optimise for equality of outcomes and prioritise offences that cause the most harm to ethnic minority communities. Now, when the family of Henry Digwear called Hampshire Police and said that Henry had been racist to the murderer, Vikram Digwear. Now, obviously, the trial proved that to be completely false. The police turned up, and there was zero burden of proof for that claim, because the police turned up and moved almost immediately to handcuff a man who was bleeding out. And we already know the police attending officers knew he had a mouthful of blood. We know that too. And if you tell police officers that there will be, quote, zero tolerance for any form of racism or defiance of these guidelines, and you must prioritize the concerns of ethnic minorities and do not treat everybody the same and do not be colorblind. Those are direct quotes from the guidelines. Then the logical conclusion, Laura, is what you saw in the body cam. And this is a really important point, because when people talk about not politicizing things, the only way literally that we can ensure that we do not have another situation like the tragedy of Henry's death is through political means. And that's why we're going to continue to make the arguments. And nobody's going to guilt trip us into not making these arguments.
Do you think the police are institutionally racist?
I think the correct answer to that has to be yes, given literally on their website, it tells people not to treat people the same, to not be colorblind. And I was listening to your interview with the Justice Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, where, and I couldn't believe my ears again, he said that, and I quote, equality does not mean treating people the same. That is literally the definition, the dictionary definition of equality. And he could not respond to your question, to your credit, you put to him, should everybody be treated the same regardless of the race? He could not answer yes. So if you ask me, is there institutional racism, when literally the Justice Minister and the police's own guidelines instruct officers not to treat people the same according to their race, there can only be one answer, and that is yes.
But does the current status of how police are trained erase decades of evidence that it's ethnic minorities who get a harsher ride from the police and justice system?
I don't think any new evidence erases any previous evidence, but this is also a really important point, because some people put to me, somebody who's an ethnic minority, oh, but Zia, are there no examples of police racism against ethnic minorities? Of course there are such examples. But I put it to you, Laura, that not a single one of those examples is in compliance with the police code of conduct. And that's why we've got to talk about this, because the point we have made time and again, and as has Nigel, we want to live in a country where everyone's treated equally, where regardless of what religion you are, you don't get to carry deadly weapons. And if you vote for a Reform MP and we get a Reform government, Nigel's the Prime Minister, I'm the Home Secretary, regardless of what religion you are, you will not be carrying a deadly weapon on our streets.
And are you comfortable with American politicians claiming that Henry's death was a result of a mass invasion of migrants, or Pete Hegseth standing up at a D-Day commemoration and upbraiding European leaders?
I don't speak for the White House. I'm here to speak for Nigel Farage and for the Reform Party.
With that? You've got close links with the Trump administration.
Well, I have no personal links to the Trump administration. But here's the important point. I believe in freedom of speech. I think politicians from all over the world can express their views. I'm here to represent Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. That's what I'm doing. Okay, so Yusuf, thanks very much indeed for coming in to speak to us and giving us your time on an important weekend, no question. Thank you very much indeed.